All right, welcome back, everybody. And thank you again, Veronica, Chris, Kate, and Chandra for that last session. So moving on to our next topic, Commerce Next has been talking a lot about the upcoming holiday shipping challenges slash crisis. And one clear solution and outlet to relying on shipping companies has been that we've been highlighting is curbside pickup. So we're really excited to have Indy Guha from Signifyd and Jennifer Benda from Dick's Sporting Goods to dig deep into how to make these kind of programs work. So Indy, I'll turn it over to you now.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Indy over here. We're going to tee up all of the practical tips and tricks that Jen will share with just some data on the surge we're seeing across omnichannel in our network of merchants that Signifyd supports. And we're going to share some shopper research we did on holiday shopping plans. We surveyed about 1,200 respondents, and I think it will underline exactly how strategic this channel can be. So we'll keep this quick so we can really learn from Jen. With that, we'll dive in. Maybe just to set the stage a little bit for how Signifyd has all of this data, we sit in the checkout flows of a few thousand merchants, and Walmart and eBay on down, and we're able to, on their behalf, allow through all good traffic and just keep out the fraud. To do that, we get a huge amount of data on shopping session behavior, any data element that hits the shopping cart and the payments layer, and then fulfillment data after the fact. So that's kind of what we're looking at in constructing these trend lines for you. And we'll start at the highest level. Shouldn't be surprising to anybody at this point, but if you look at same-store sales or storefronts year over year, the worst month e-commerce has had so far is kind of 40% year-over-year growth, with months like May clocking north of 80%. This is obviously looking across categories, and it means we in e-commerce time warped to give or take 2024, maybe 2025. And I'm sure you're all feeling that in terms of the workloads and hours your teams are putting in. Why is sporting goods so interesting to dig into, and what can we learn from them? Well, some of you may have heard other talks where I've shown the full fan of outcomes across different e-commerce verticals as shoppers have moved their purchasing to digital, to online. And the initial big spike during the pandemic in March was really essentials, groceries, baby supplies, pet supplies, etc., weapons, among other things. But then once that wave passed, the hierarchy of needs really shifted to anti-boredom purchases, and sporting goods was right on the front lines of absorbing that surge in demand. And whatever they went through in April and May is a really good touch point for what everyone else is going to feel as we go into the holiday season. Probably worth noting that our friends in sporting goods also had a pretty material back to school bump, but the seasonality curve looks the same as last year, just off a higher baseline. And you can't talk about this growth in sporting goods purchases without talking about curbside and omnichannel. So prior to the crisis, only about 3 to 4% of sporting goods orders were through some form of store pickup. And right now, they're hovering at 12%. The interesting part is right in the middle of that springtime rush, it got up to a quarter. And Jen will be sharing what some of these numbers look like for Dick's. It's part of their public information sharing as a public company. So nothing overly sensitive there, but really interesting to think about. And I think this spike really speaks to the pattern other categories you're going to see during the holiday season. And so just rounding out with some quick shopper research, again, over about 1,200 respondents, one of the big implications of social distancing measures, rising caseloads in various states, is 53% of the people we surveyed said they're going to spend less time in stores. Obviously, they still have holiday shopping to do. If anything, we are seeing gifting behavior increase. because people can't travel to be with friends and family, and gifting is a way to express togetherness. And so that gifting is going to take place in other channels. Again, physical stores are going to go down in mix. And that means the big growth areas will be buy online, pickup in store, and curbside pickup. Obviously, the usual suspects are featured here as well. Mobile orders will increase. The question here is shopping methods you intend to use more this holiday season than in past years. And our traditional digital channels will also increase, but I don't think we would have seen this kind of omni-channel behavior without how frictionless people like Jen have made curbside shopping as a customer experience. And I think we'll close out with this thought. We'll move to really learning from Jen here. Because the experiences retailers have spun up have been so compelling and easy, habits have been formed. And I think when we ask shoppers, what will you be doing differently in your shopping behavior a year from now? I think they want to continue using curbside and they want to continue using BOPUS. And so, yes, to Scott's comments, this conversation is about holiday readiness and offloading shipping costs. I think it's also just part of the ongoing suite of options and customer experiences retailers will need to offer. So with that, Jen, I'm gonna call you in. I don't know if you want to share a couple of words about kind of your journey across Keen and Dix so the audience knows where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to be here. And as always, I love hanging out with Indy. So thanks Commerce Next for having us hang out this afternoon. So part of the journey into Dick's Sporting Goods has been interesting in that I moved across the country from Portland, Oregon to Pittsburgh in the dead of winter. And then I had the joy of being in corporate housing when a global pandemic hit. So it's definitely been interesting on a personal level. But right as that was really setting in, obviously Dick's Sporting Goods is the largest sporting goods retailer in the United States. And data that Indy shared is really rich and powerful to see. We of course are seeing those same trends. But what was interesting is when, a lot of retailers and other brands that are sitting on here, I come from the brand world prior to being in a big box retailer. There is not the same competitive advantage from a fulfillment network perspective when you're more on the brand side than when you're in a retailer, because you just don't have that same store footprint to leverage. So Dick's, we are really fortunate that we do have that. But then it comes with challenges, because when you have to shut your largest fulfillment chain down, when we closed all of our stores, you don't have a lot of access to your inventory to meet the customer demand and the shipping SLAs that people are still looking for. So it was amazing. The e-commerce and the omni-channel teams within the tech organization at Dick's, literally within 2 days after all of our stores shut down, we deployed an MVP of curbside contactless pickup. And I think we're all kicking ourselves that we didn't try to go and trademark any of that, but it was tremendous to see a 48-hour sprint with a handful of different technical product teams internally turn around a viable solution that consisted of pieces of paper that had signs taped to the doors in our stores and cones that had flags standing on them in the parking lots. And literally we enabled our BOPUS fulfillment channel with paper and pens in the stores, and some great messaging and a really great marketing team to kind of pull it all together seemingly overnight. So that has been great. And I think we saw, into Q2, that momentum, as Indy highlights, that is not only accelerating, but it really took hold massively in Q2 for us. Dick's was up almost 200% in e-commerce in Q2 over last year. And our e-com penetration I believe it was like midway through Q2, we then were able to open up all of our stores. But we still saw 30% of e-com revenue compared to 12% of e-com revenue as a total mix of business from last year. So, you know, as people were shutting their doors, we are not. We're opening more stores now, and you know, it continues to be really competitive advantage in that curbside pickup isn't going away, and now other retailers are. I think we're all starting to learn from each other to see what experiences are great, what hasn't worked out too well, and how we can innovate together a little bit.
Perfect. So, you know, Jen, what I love about that story and what I think might have a lot of resonance today is you didn't let perfect be the enemy of the good. You figured out how to get that minimum viable product out. It's obviously been a huge success, and there's been a lot of refinements over the last 6 months. But for everybody in the audience today trying to figure out how to get something out the door and potentially ahead of the holiday season, maybe that's not really possible anymore because October is now Christmas, but let's just assume people are still trying to get ahead of the holiday season. What should they be thinking about? What is kind of that MVP checklist or set of actions?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And I think perfect gets in the way of good all the time. And consumer expectations, I believe, have shifted so drastically because of COVID that we're just grateful nowadays to get what we want in a relatively normal time frame. That as brands or retailers, remember, you have a lot of tools at your fingertips today that don't require significant technical investment. So social media and email and signage in your store, all of that stuff's pretty cheap to use to communicate to your customers directly. And, you know, being able to say, call us when you pull up. If you place an order online with us, just come to the front of the store, right? Roll down your window, wear your mask. Although it could be a little bit more frictioned than normal, I think at this point, people would just rather have that than have to sacrifice not getting what they need when they want it. So I think using tools that you might have used as just outbound marketing materials previously, leverage those tools to now communicate what experience they can expect. And I think proactively setting those expectations through hero banners on websites and keeping them persistent in your footer and just where you would normally go from a consumer perspective to find tips and tricks, right? Header and footer are those persistent locations. Email is a very utilized channel of communication. Social media, all of those avenues are ways that are easily accessible and aren't a heavy investment.
Yeah, and speaking of not being a heavy investment, obviously you've had to build this at retailers of the scale of Dick's, but I know you're very passionate about small business as well, and I imagine our audience today has a wide range of retail sizes. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing with smaller businesses kind of trying to build out that curbside experience.
Yeah, you know what? So I was going for a run a couple weeks ago. Thankfully, COVID gives you those lunchtime breaks nowadays. And there is this tiny, probably 70-year-old hardware store that's a few blocks from my house. And when I first moved into the neighborhood, the parking lot was pretty run down. And it was such a vast eye catcher as I'm running through what used to be a pretty dilapidated parking lot. All they did was repaint their parking lot. And now they have numbers with a plastic sign that they tape to trees in front of like 5 spots. And it's like, call us when you get here or call for an order and we'll take it for you. So, you know, zero technology being used, and this small shop is, you know, been around forever, and they just repainted to make it accessible for the community, which was really cool to see.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. That's a great story. Cool. Well, maybe skipping ahead a little bit, we don't have to talk about anything too forward-looking. I'm sure there's a lot of confidentiality around that, but I'm sure there was a learning curve over the course of Q2. Like, you spun up this channel and then the order volume skyrocketed. What were some of the key learnings, and kind of how did you go from prototype to sort of a fully baked version 1, if you will?
Mm. You know, a lot of it comes from our store associates, we call as teammates, the feedback we got from them on what our athletes and customers in the field were just telling us, right? So as simple as, we can't read that sign in the door because maybe the handwriting is kind of messy, to I tried calling and I didn't get through. And so listening to your customers and actually taking that feedback seriously. And for us, doing that trends analysis, right? We have hundreds of stores, so being really quick and thoughtful about how you're evaluating insights you get. And for us, it became, hey, we have to enable a check-in feature, right? And so I encourage everyone, you know, of course, it's a plug to go shop at my retailer, but you know, buy online and you'll get your automated email that says, once you're in our parking lot, check in, and we'll take you to a screen that says, tell us what car you're in, right? Now, let's be very candid. There's hundreds of retailers that do that at scale as well. But for us to have nothing at the beginning of March, to be at that, you know, in a couple months was massive. That at our scale does require technical investment and, you know, dozens of teams to work through it. But I think learning that more analog approach, albeit worked in the immediate, our customers were feeling like, hey, I was somewhere else and I sat in your parking lot for, you know, a handful of minutes. Well, we want people to move forward, move through the process quicker. And I think we were also starting to say, hey, come holiday time, we need to cut down on the folks in our parking lot for a significant amount of time, right? At that point, it's lines in the store are one part, but we're gonna have lines in our parking lot now, right? Right? Like, how do you move people through that? So those are all just, I think, logistical considerations that retailers have to consider today in preparation for holiday for them to be set up for success and just the change in consumer behavior.
For sure. And maybe it's a good time to think about, we can zoom out from Dix a little bit and just brainstorm with the audience kind of which retailers are best in class in that curbside experience, who's really pushing the envelope on what's possible. And I'll fold in a question from Lucille here. She asks, what is Dix doing to make curbside sort of a holiday experience? Music, decor, impulse stands, curbside offers, etc. And again, I know you can't talk about much of that, but to the extent there's stuff that you're already doing, maybe share a bit of that, and we can certainly talk about what other retailers you respect are doing along those lines.
Yeah, I'll probably take it from more a generic perspective, which is, I think what I'm seeing in the industry across sectors now is leveraging technologies like geolocationing services. So that's not a new technology from a space of mobile capabilities. And for those that are not necessarily in the technical field, geolocationing is basically the ability to, let's say, put a giant fence around your store, a virtual friends. And if someone on their phone has your mobile app and your mobile app has a geo service embedded, when you drive in and you're within that fence that we've set up, it'll be able to automatically alert both the store and the customer that says, you're probably in our parking lot, or maybe you're within a mile, how's traffic? Those are really where, from prepping for holiday, knowing that people are not as confident in going inside the stores, parking lot congestion is going to be what I believe is likely the largest pain point from a customer satisfaction perspective in holiday shopping. So geolocationing services is one. Nordstrom, for example, has been doing this for years. They had it embedded 5 years ago. I'm sure if anyone from Nordstrom is on, I'm way off, so don't quote me on that. But they were a little bit more pioneering in that space to say, when you're within, I think it's a half mile or so of a store, they can send you a push notification that says, we think you're nearby and you have an order to pick up, go to door 6. Or if you are in this right parking lot, let us confirm here. Again, that's big technology solves. It's really cutting edge from an innovation perspective, but their whole goal is to minimize that congestion, get people through so their fulfillment times are still solid, and that the experience is great. So I think that's probably where I just see a lot of big retailers going, because that technology has been there, like I said, for many years. And I think the ability to use it now is easier than it used to be holistically.
Yeah, great thoughts. I'll chime in on one piece of Lucille's question and connect it to your point around parking lot congestion. I think impulse stands or additional kind of curbside merchandising can backfire, especially during peak days within the holiday window, in slowing down that throughput in that channel, even if you've got a really well laid out parking lot flow. So that one, to my mind, is a double-edged sword. I don't know if you have a reaction to that. I can also see the upside, but if the line gets backed up, then while the first customer had a great cross-sell merchandising experience, everybody after them is going to be frustrated and will ignore the merchandise.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Indy, actually, from your perspective, because a curbside order has already gone through fraud checks and sort of that financial assessment on the front end, when you are then sitting in your car and you're trying to pick up your order, what are you guys starting to see just from a fraud perspective at that moment of pickup for curbside? I think maybe some of those kind of curbside goodies, if you will, that you buy right there, add another layer of like immediate fraud that could happen too.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think to the extent someone's swiping a credit card on the curbside goodies, the merchant wouldn't carry liability on that. So it's certainly problematic from a customer experience perspective if that ends up being theft, but at least the merchant's not carrying the liability because it's a physical credit card transaction. That said, I think in general, for all of the goodness of curbside, I hate to say it, it is kind of a fraudster's dream. It's the perfect confluence of, hey, the whole expectation of this channel is I will place an order late at night, it'll be ready for pickup the next morning, or I'll place an order in the morning and I can pick it up during my lunch break because today I decided not to go for a run. That speed expectation, let's take the morning order lunch scenario, once you back out actual picking and packing time for the store associate, you've got minutes to make a decision on whether to fulfill that order. Is issue number one. Issue number two, no matter how much store associate training you do, and I don't know, Jen, if you have a perspective on this, that's not identity verification is not the store associate's day job. And during rush periods or parking lot backlog periods, whatever training you've given them on ID verification is going to break down. So from a fraudster's perspective, like, what a great channel to buy high value merchandise, show up with a mask on because that's government guidance, show an order confirmation on your phone through a window and open your trunk. And the precise promise of the channel is touchless transfer of product into trunk and you drive off. So we do see kind of 2 to 3x higher fraud levels in this channel relative to, more traditional fulfillment. And, as you're designing this, retailers, I would say defense in depth is the key. You gotta have the right device verification, card verification, etc. up front, so that if someone's identity's been compromised, you catch it at the point of placing the order. And then you probably do need, to your point on geolocation, if you're able to capture the device ID at the point of pickup, if the same order placed was the same person placing the order is coming to pick up. And then lastly, training store associates to kind of deal with that surge. But Scott's on, so I think we've officially geeked out past our time. I don't know, Scott, if you want to get any closing thoughts from Jennifer.
Yeah, like any final thoughts, Jennifer, and then we need to wrap up.
Yeah, I think the reality is that as retailers and brands, I think we assume things need to be a little bit more frictionless than reality for this holiday season. I think the world is different, and to our earliest part in the conversation, that an MVP, as analog as it might be, is likely still going to be better for your consumers than nothing. And ask for forgiveness at some point, right? I think take some risks this holiday and explore a little bit.
Well, great. Thank you both so much. Congrats, Jennifer, on moving so quickly on these projects and the success of them so far. Best wishes for a smooth holiday. And Indy, thank you as always for sharing such great data and bringing this topic to our holiday summit. So appreciate it.